just before she comes, I just want to say one thing personally about her character. And Riley, I know that you've long forgotten this. This is so small, but it was small to you perhaps, but not to me. I first met Riley a couple years ago at a FRC conference, Family Research Conference, and I was in the lobby. I just happened to run into her. She was the next speaker up, so like in 20 minutes, she was going to speak. And I just went over and introduced myself and said, I just am so grateful for your example, for your courage, for how you're being used across our country in such a wonderful way. And I just wanted to thank you for that. And then I just expected her to say thanks and just keep on walking. But she stopped and she said, well, who are you? And I told her, and she said, oh, well, what do you do? I said, well, I lead Turning Point Academy. Oh, well, what does Turning Point Academy do? And so I shared with her a little bit about, I kept thinking, Riley, you've got to go. You're the next speaker up. But, that so struck me about her person, about her character, that even though it would have been very easy for her just to keep on walking, just kind of blow me off, she didn't know who I was, she took the time to really ask about me. And I just thought, that is so rare. And to me, that just spoke volumes about your character. And so we are so grateful that you would make the time to come and speak to us this morning. Join me in welcoming Riley Gaines.
Goodness gracious, that was so kind. Thank you guys for being here. It has been quite the weekend, over at the convention center here today. How remarkable to see yesterday speaking on main stage to 7,000 or so students. It's inspiring is what it is, really. It's encouraging. It leaves me feeling hopeful and optimistic. And then to be here today at the Educator Summit, speaking before you all, people who have the real ability to have impact in your communities, locally, at the state level and beyond. So just very, very grateful. This is not often the rooms I find myself in. Number one, where I'm welcomed with open arms. I'm received well. As Hutz mentioned, it wasn't too long ago, I had the displeasure of going to San Francisco, which was my first mistake, by the way, going to San Francisco. But I went to San Francisco State University. Of course, it's been a mission of mine, a passion of mine these past really two and a half years or so to get on campuses, to really, both high school and colleges, and to really mobilize and engage with the youth. Of course, this is a demographic that I believe is often left out of these important deemed political conversations, and so I love doing it. So been on about 80, 100 or so different campuses. Went to San Francisco State University. I guess just naive to believe that these students and community members would come with an open mind and the willingness to have their hearts softened, because they did not. They came with pitchforks and fire. And upon delivering my message in a relatively similar forum, it was a classroom setting, so there was a podium at the front, there was a whiteboard behind me, there were doors at the back, seats out in the audience. Upon delivering my message, a group of protesters rush in, hundreds of them, and they turn off the lights to the room, so it goes pitch black. A room like this, there's no windows, pitch black. And the protesters ambush me, like I'm fully accosted. I'm being pushed, I'm being shoved, I'm being punched in the face, quite literally, by these men wearing dresses, which fortunately for me, their punches don't hurt that bad. But nonetheless, these protesters, they ended up barricading me in a room and holding me for ransom for almost 5 hours, demanding that if I wanted to make it back home to see my family safely again, I had to pay them money. You might be wondering, where were the police? We were in San Francisco, so the police were being held for ransom with me. Hour 3, hour 4 in this room, I'm looking at the officers, can't you do something? Actually, isn't it your job to do something? To which they said verbatim, no. We can't do anything. We're not allowed to do anything because we're not allowed to be seen as anything other than an ally to that community, or else we'll lose our jobs. Again, the same community who's on the other side of the doors, calling these officers racist pigs for protecting a white girl like me. I'll share this portion because I would imagine as educators or parents, this is something that maybe you all have had some kind of behind the scenes experience with. It's about midnight at this point. They were holding me through the middle of the night. And so the dean of students of the university ends up showing up. Again, middle of the night, he starts negotiating with the students how much I owe each of them to be able to leave, which the price they ultimately agreed upon was $10 each, which makes me mad because I think I'm worth more than $10. Eventually, we were able to get out of this room. Not because the protesters dispersed, but more so about 40 or so officers formed a diamond around me. We pushed out. But the next day, this is the most remarkable part of the story. The next day, the vice president of student affairs at the university sent out a university-wide email. So of course, this had garnered national attention at this point. Throughout the night, being stuck in this room. Sent a university-wide email, so to all students, the entire student body, all faculty, all professors, all staff, and in this email she said, "We are so proud of our brave students for handling Riley Gaines in the manner that they did." You know, we know how deeply traumatic her presence is on our campus, and so here's some counseling resources for you all. Take the day off of school. They literally got the day off of school. Just know that we see you, we hear you, we love you, and we stand with you. Nowhere in this email did it condemn violence, violence against women for that matter. Nowhere in this email did it say that we uphold and we see the value in our First Amendment rights and freedom of speech. No, of course not. I can describe, seemingly hundreds of similar scenarios where I've been spit on, drinks poured on me, glass bottles thrown at me, the most obscene, profane, heinous things you could possibly imagine being hurled my way. I could keep going. But all of that, again, just to reiterate the point that I'm so excited to be in this room. Look, I'll just give a very brief background of how I have found myself here. As I imagine many of you have children. Started swimming when I was 4, graduated when I was 22, so dedicated 18 years of my life to my sport. Again, probably don't have to explain what this is like. As parents of athletes, maybe athletes, former athletes yourself, you understand the time, the hours, the dedication, the sacrifices that you have to make to compete at and ultimately be successful at the highest level. I was no different. Began getting recruited for college. I'm very biased. I'm sorry, the SEC is the best conference. I knew I was going to stay in the SEC. Did not know I was going to go to the University of Kentucky. As a lifelong and very proud Tennessean, I thought the only things that came from Kentucky were like meth and Mountain Dew. I don't know. Not interested in either of those things. But took a trip there, fell in love. I fell in love with the university. I fell in love with the team, the campus, the resources that they provided to us outside of even just athletics. The resources they poured into our academics, into our service, both things that really mattered to me. And so on a whim, I committed here, and there really couldn't have been a better place for me. Very proudly finished my career there as a 5-time SEC champion, a 12-time NCAA All-American, actually the SEC record holder in the 200 butterfly, making me one of the fastest Americans of all time. 2-time Olympic trial qualifier, SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year, SEC Community Service Leader of the Year. The list goes on, but again, just to highlight the fact that it's a lifelong journey to reach that point. Flash forward to my senior year. I'd set a goal of winning a national title. This came after my junior year, placing 7th in the nation, which I was proud of. To be top 8 or an All-American, it's a pretty high honor, but didn't go my best time. I knew I was capable of more, and so set a goal for winning a national title in my senior year, which would of course mean becoming the fastest woman in the country in my respective event. Senior year rolls around. right on pace to achieve this goal. About midway through my senior season, I ranked third in the nation in the 200 free, trailing the girl in second, a girl I knew very well, by a few 100ths of a second, very small margin. Our sport is one that's measured in a very small margin, hundredths of a second. But the swimmer who was leading the nation, by body lengths, might I add, was a swimmer that none of us had ever heard of before. Not me, not my teammates, not my coaches, none of us. And this was the first time we became aware of a swimmer named Lia Thomas. Lots of red flags at the time. Keep in mind, we hadn't seen a photo of this person, or else things definitely would have been a little more clear. But for all we knew at the time, this was a senior from University of Pennsylvania, which is not a school that has ever historically produced that caliber of swimmer, leading the nation again by body lengths in events ranging from the 100 freestyle, which is a sprint, all the freestyle events in between through the mile, which is of course long distance. I mean, none of it made sense. I'm scratching my head, I'm talking to my coaches, who is this? We had no idea. And we continued to stay in the dark until an article came out. And this article disclosed very briefly that Lia Thomas is actually Will Thomas and swam 3 years on the men's team at University of Pennsylvania before deciding to switch to the women's team. And so, when I read this, of course, I was shocked. My whole team was shocked. But really upon reading it, I felt this sense of relief. Like, oh, duh, that makes sense. This person's a man. That's why they're leading the nation in so many events by such a large margin. This feeling of relief was only further solidified when I went to look up who Will Thomas was. Unsurprisingly, this was a very mediocre male swimmer. Actually, probably generous. Really, this was a less than average male swimmer, competing at the Division I level, ranking in the 400s and 500s nationally the year prior, to then just 12 months later dominating, not just number one, I mean dominating the entire country of women. But again, kind of why I say I felt relieved, because I imagined that the NCAA would see it how I saw it. And again, how my teammates saw it, how my coaches saw it, how my parents saw it, how anyone with any amount of brain activity would probably comprehend this information. There was already a policy in place for doping, right, for taking performance-enhancing drugs. I believed, naively, without ever looking into it at the time, because I never knew I would have had to, that the NCAA had policies that would prevent men from entering into women's sports, but no. Lo and behold, the NCAA saw nothing wrong with this. And so about 3 weeks before our national championships in March of 2022, they released a statement saying that Thomas's participation in the women's category was a non-negotiable, meaning there's nothing we could do. There was no questions that we could ask, there were no concerns that we could raise as women, as female athletes. We were quite literally told we had to accept this with a smile on our face. And so I watched that first day. It was the 500 freestyle, which is not an event that I typically do, and so I watched that first day as Thomas swam to a national title in the 500 freestyle, beating out Olympians, beating out American record holders. I mean, keep in mind, these aren't scrubs. Okay, they're the most impressive and accomplished female swimmers this world has ever seen, and he beat them all by body lengths. Second day of competition was the 200 free, which is the event that he and I race each other in. So we're standing on the block, top 8 women in the entire country, and I look over, a few lanes over from me, and there was what was very visibly a man standing there. 6'4", size 15 feet, taking up the entire block. Visible from his side profile is not only his Adam's apple, but to be very explicit, I mean the bulge in his women's swimsuit. It was very obvious this was a man, but we were being told to deny what our eyes were seeing, what our ears were hearing, what our gut instincts were telling us to be true. So dove off the block, swam 8 laps of freestyle, touched a wall at the end, look up at the scoreboard behind me, and almost impossibly enough, we had gone the exact same time down to the 100th of a second, meaning that we had tied, which I mean, number one, is incredibly embarrassing for a 6'4" man. But two, it's rare, right? You're racing for about 1 minute and 40 seconds, and not even 1/100th of a second separated us. Which, looking back now, you can't tell me that's not divine intervention. So anyways, we get out of the water, we go behind the awards podium where the NCAA official looks at both Thomas and myself, again, him towering over me, and this official says, "Great job, you two, but you tied. We don't account for ties, we only have 1 trophy, so we're gonna give the trophy to Leah. Sorry, Riley, you just don't get one." And I was so taken aback by this. I mean, having just competed, my heart rate was still high, my adrenaline was still pumping. The first thing that I thought ended up being the first thing that I said, and the first thought that I had was, isn't this everything that Title IX was passed to prevent from happening? What do you mean you're going to give the trophy to the man in the women's 200 free? To which he wasn't prepared to answer the dreaded question of why. They didn't give him a script of what to say when someone asked why. And so he stumbled on his words, and he's, and I appreciate his honesty, I really do. And understand, this is when the official, his face changed. He looked sad, he sounded sad. I could tell he didn't even believe what he was about to say, and he looks at me and he says, "I'm so sorry, but we have been advised as an organization that when photos are being taken, it's crucial that the trophy is in his hands. You can pose with this one, but you have to give yours back. He takes the trophy home, you go home empty-handed, end of story." And let me tell you what. Well, first let me reiterate something, make something very, very clear. It was never about the trophy, like the tangible object itself. I have people all the time who will comment like, sore loser, you just wanted to, it has nothing to do with the trophy. Of course, it was the principle behind why they were doing what they were doing. I'm a 12-time All-American. I have lots of those little $5 production dinky trophies at home. Never about the trophy. It was in that moment, standing on that podium, sharing my placement with a man standing 8-9 inches taller than me, holding this trophy I knew I had to give back, when I just had this realization of, Riley, how in the world can you expect someone to stand up for you if you're not even willing to stand up for you? This has to come from you all as women, as female athletes. And I say that, how can you wait? Because that's what I was doing. Truthfully, I'm ashamed to say it. I was waiting for someone else to say something because I thought surely someone else would. I didn't think it was my job. I didn't think it was my duty, my responsibility. I was just there to swim. I trained my whole life. I trained all season for this moment. It was the culmination of my career. This was the last meet I would ever compete in. Capped off 18 years of training. I was just there to do as best as I could do performance-wise. And now I have to bear the burden of taking this on. No, that's not my job. It's a coach's job. That's an official's job. So maybe some other swimmer will do it. Someone's parents. Surely a dad will come down there and yank this man out of our locker rooms like my dad so desperately wanted to do. I didn't think it was up to me. And I after this race, I realized something. That by even getting in the pool that day, I was just as guilty as the people who created and enforced these policies. I had participated in the farce. I was willing to go along with it. I felt an overwhelming sense of guilt and conviction following that, and it was really that moment on that podium where I decided it would be me. I didn't know what this was going to look like. Of course, I could have never anticipated the direction it would take me career-wise. Being here today, I could have never anticipated this. So that's kind of the unfairness of it. Again, coupled with the locker room scene, which, kindergartners can understand how men and women are physically different in a way that would make men advantageous in sports. But what you probably can't comprehend is the feelings of just total violation in an intimate area of undressing like a locker room when a 6'4" man walks in. Put yourself, better yet, put your daughters, your granddaughters in our shoes. You're in this locker room, putting on your racing suit, which is skin tight. It's paper thin. It takes like 15, 20 minutes to really poke and prod yourself into these suits. That's 15 to 20 minutes of which you're fully exposed. And I think locker rooms in general aren't necessarily a comfortable place, if you will, but growing up a swimmer, you almost become comfortable being vulnerable in that environment. That vulnerability is stripped from you. When you're putting on your suit, it goes dead silent. You turn around, there's a 6'4" man taking off his women's swimsuit, fully naked, fully intact, fully exposing himself, inches away from where you were simultaneously fully undressed. All the while the adults, I mean, not only did they allow this to happen, they celebrated this. They reprimanded us as women if we even dared to question what we were being asked to participate in, really what we were being forced to participate in. On top of the silencing that we faced, understand what we went through, and again, I would imagine many of you have seen this play out in your own lives in some way, in some circumstance. The emotional blackmail, I think that's the best way to put it, that we faced to stay quiet. How our universities did everything in their power to keep us from using our voices, to effectively muzzle us, to believe that we were the oppressors in this story, how he was the victim. He just wanted to be happy. We were impeding on his happiness. How could we live with ourselves? You know, there's so much more to life than winning. Sports are about camaraderie and friendship and being happy, which let me tell you, never once at 4:30 in the morning when I was about to jump into a cold pool did my coach ask me if I was feeling happy that day. I wish he did. And my answer 10 days out of 10 days would have been absolutely not. Anyways, I mean, I could list example after example after example. How they compared us feeling like we didn't want him in our locker room to the segregation of African Americans, how we were equivalent to white supremacists and the KKK and racists in the 1960s and prior, how our rhetoric could be harming someone somewhere, someone could die, and we would ultimately then be murderers. How could we live with ourselves if we knew we had this blood on our hands? We would lose our scholarships, you'll lose your friends, you'll never get a job. That's what they told us. You know, your employer will look you up if you speak about this, and they'll see that you're a transphobe. And no one's gonna hire you. It's standard practice. They look up their employees. No one will ever hire you if you speak about this. It works when you're talking to a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-old girls. Anyways, all of that in short, believe it or not, that's the in short version. That is how I have found myself here. But I would imagine much more important than how, and a question many of you have probably asked yourselves over the past 5 years especially, some of you probably, the people in this room, much longer than the past 5 years, is the question of why, right? Like, why is this happening? Why is our culture being plagued by this chaos? Why does it have us in a chokehold? Why are we so willing to go along with this? Which, as a Christian, I feel very confident in answering the question of why, because the Bible tells us why. We're told and we're warned of a time where these spiritual battles will intensify, where darkness will be seen as light, where bitter will be seen as sweet, and where evil will be seen as moral. And it's undeniable that that's not where we're at, even still with Donald Trump in the White House. But from a worldly perspective, answering the question of why is this happening? Understand, number one, it's so much broader than just women's sports. Okay, it's so much bigger than having to share the podium with a man. Number one, children are being mutilated and sterilized. There is nothing more sinister, maybe outside of abortion. I mean, prematurely ending life, of course, that's unthinkable, especially now as a mom to be 30 weeks pregnant with a little baby girl. I can't even fathom the thought. But to think how we have reached a point where these people who call themselves healthcare providers, that's really rich I would prefer the term unregulated butchery providers. These are people whom insurance companies are paying, healthcare facilities and providers are covering for. You have healthy children, confused maybe, sure, but otherwise healthy children walking into a clinic, a doctor's office, and with little to no consultation, they are being prescribed hormones, administered drugs, going through surgical procedures, having their breasts removed. I mean, as young as, we've heard stories, people, of course, like Chloe Cole, who's a friend of Turning Point, at 15 years old, had her breasts removed. Realized pretty quickly after that she made a horrible mistake. Her healthcare providers abandoned her completely because they realized there's no money in detransitioning, in helping you once we've already done this. We've created this Frankenstein lifelong patient here, but there's no money in helping you return back to your previous self, the person that God has created you to be. And of course, how amazing is it that we have a creator who doesn't make mistakes. But overall, this denial that we've seen pushed so radically and with such persistence from the other side, the past 5 years especially, but again, it's been going on, I have realized now, much longer than the past 5 years, this denial of truth entirely, saying that men can become women, women can become men can get pregnant, tampons belong in boys' bathrooms. These ideas, it's a total denial that objective truth, that reality, immutable truth exists. And it's a really scary thought when you think about it. So these cultural wins, I don't think they should be underscored because it's foundational. If we are willing to say that men can become women, there are no limits to what we are willing to deny. Think about it. What's the next thing? Age? Should I be able to identify as 65 and collect Social Security benefits? It sounds absurd, doesn't it? Like that sounds like the craziest thing ever. But how is that any more absurd than the denial of sex, man and woman, it's the sheer essence of humanity. It's the exact same premise. And again, that's a really scary thought, and you should be asking us where that's headed, which, lots of thoughts there, but I do believe it's headed to a point where there's an attempt to normalize pedophilia in that way where age is kind of just, yeah, sure, this person's 12, and yeah, sure, this person is 45, but it's just age, it's just a number. You can identify as something other than you wish. It's a really scary thought. All that to say, I feel more hopeful at this point than I have felt at any point over these past three and a half years or so. Of course, we have seen win after win after win after win with Donald Trump back in the White House, across the board. From the national stage, of course, we have seen President Trump signing executive orders declaring there are only two sexes, male and female, signing EOs, barring men from participating in women's sports, where of course you still have your typical bad actors who are willing and ready to defiantly ignore this at all costs. People like Governor Newsom, people like Governor Mills of Maine, Washington, Oregon, Minnesota, the list goes on. It's the usual suspects, the people that you would imagine are ignoring President Trump. They think they're giving, like a middle finger to President Trump, which is not at all what they're doing, by the way. They're giving a middle finger to little girls, which is again pretty serious. So we've seen great things at the national stage. We've just mentioned the Supreme Court cases and wins that we've seen surrounding the safeguarding of children, the Scarametti case out of Tennessee, parental rights. The Supreme Court just announced that they will hear oral arguments this fall for a Title IX case, which will be huge. I believe, as it stands now, of course, the votes are there to really once and for all declare that Title IX is intended to prevent sex-based discrimination, not on the basis of gender identity, which is exactly what, actually going back to the Obama administration, they have been doing. Of course, it was radically rewritten, Title IX under President Biden. President Trump has worked relentlessly with the Department of Education to re-implement Title IX as it was originally meant to be read So fantastic things being done there, but I think more importantly, what we're seeing at the state level. We've now seen 28 states pass some sort of fairness in women's sports law, ultimately, again, barring men from participating in women's sports and vice versa, Nebraska being the most recent. We've seen 17 states ultimately define the word woman in law. Cannot believe we have to do that, that we have to, again, words we've never struggled to understand. In the nearly 250 years we've been established as a country, and certainly much longer than that, we have to define these words in law, but nonetheless it's necessary because what we've seen over the past few years are these unelected bureaucrats, or educrats, maybe that's a new word that we in this room can use, go through the back door and reinterpret these words to mean what they want them to mean. But no more in 17 states thus far. They've defined the word woman, Texas actually being the most recent. It was just on Governor Stein's desk in North Carolina, to which he vetoed this, of course, who's shocked. So hopefully they have the votes to override this veto really in the next few days, so hopefully that will become the 18th state. So fantastic stuff being done at the state level, which is really great news. I don't know if there's an opportunity to ask any sort of questions. I figured it would be best to open it up for that, maybe even if it's just a few.
We can do that. We have people with mics, and I know that you're pressed for time, but we can take a couple of questions. And Riley, I want to ask you the first one.
Yeah.
So here you are, early 20s, minding your own business, swimming in the pool, doing your laps, albeit very, very fast at an all-American level, and having no idea what was before you, what was going to happen, that God was going to thrust you, because of your willingness, because of your courage, on the national stage. But did you ever think, when you're a young 20 girl, that God was going to use you in ways like He's using you now? Did that ever cross your mind?
I mean, how could it have? This is never a conversation, again, that I would imagine I would be a part of, or I mean, more so a conversation I never even knew we would have to have. So following undergrad, I was in dental school to be a dentist. Actually set to specialize in endodontics, which is root canals, weirdly enough. Which, although I think this position that I'm in is weirdly more painful than a root canal. That's what I planned for. Took the DAT, the dental admissions test, the miserable test to get into dental school, scored in the top percentile nationally, could have gone anywhere in the country that I wanted to go to pursue dentistry. Accepted my seat at University of Tennessee. I had been awarded tens of thousands of dollars in scholarship funds to continue my postgraduate education there. That's what I prepared for. I knew nothing about politics, literally nothing. I knew we had 3 branches. Didn't know what they did. I still don't really know what they do. I don't even think they know what they do. My public speaking courses in college, my face turned the color of a tomato. Like this is never what I wanted to do, but I didn't feel, qualified for it or prepared for it. But I was really wrong in assuming that that's how God works, that He calls those who are already prepared. Because that's not what He does at all. Actually, quite the contrary. He prepares those who He calls. And if He brings you to something, He'll certainly bring you through it. Just like He did with Moses, who led the Israelites out with Aaron and his staff. Just like He did with Joshua, who promised a victory over the Canaanites. And just like He did with Esther before she was brought before the king. So it's been a lot of trusting and obeying. And I mean, I pray every single day. I pray for strength. I pray for wisdom. I pray for guidance and protection. And it's crazy because I feel Him provide those things. I'm able to do what I do, truthfully. People say all the time, how can you withstand the negativity or the pushback or the hateful comments? To which my response is easily. Easily, I do it with a smile on my face. Because I know, number one, I'm not fighting for anything of this world. I am fighting for the hope and the promise of eternal life. That is what I am here on this planet fighting. And yes, of course, I'm standing for objective truth. Far more important to me, I'm standing for biblical truth. And it goes back to the first book, like He made them male and female intentionally and uniquely in His perfect image. So it allows me to do what I do. Once I had that perspective shift, I could care less. Like truthfully, like it's in one ear, out of the other, right over my head. These people who want to leave negative comments, by all means, feel free. I know, like I'm so secure and confident with myself, with my position on this argument, on this ongoing debate, that it's, feel free to leave your comments. I think it speaks more about you than it does about me. So.
Great answer, Riley. Thank you so much. Time for a couple of questions.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for being here. It's super inspiring. So I served in the military for about 8 years. My last year in the military, I actually found myself writing a policy that it would be okay for field exercises for our female soldiers to shower in the same places as our male soldiers, vice versa. I was an unbeliever, and when I got out, shortly after, I was saved. And so I remember looking back to that policy and thinking, how could I have written that? How could I have really in good faith handed that to my commander and said, please sign this, sir? There's no way that now as a believer, saved by the redeeming work of Christ alone, that I could ever feel comfortable with that. So when you really spoke about the guilt, about sitting there and doing that, I think about the female soldiers I left in that position to say, this is what you have to do because your commander says so. So I really appreciate you speaking to that. But also, I now have 4 children and 3 boys and 1 little girl. So what would you say, since you are also right down that path, what would you say to a 4-year-old little girl who has all brothers, to her uniqueness and her identity in Christ? What would you say to her?
I bet she rules the roost. That's so funny. My family is the exact opposite, where I have, there's 3 girls and 1 boy, and so I feel for your daughter, but at the same time, I'm sure she's totally spoiled and has many, many protectors in her life, which is really a blessing. What I would say to your daughter is, number 1, you deserve to be able to call yourself a champion. And that's that message is in stark contrast with what she's been told culturally and societally the past 4 or 5 years. These are girls who have dreams to succeed, dreams to achieve, whether it's in athletics or beyond, in their career, in their relationships, within their personal life, like whatever the setting is. And they've been told the past 4 years that they should apologize, basically, for being a girl. We've been silenced as women, telling us again to let your guard down, ignore your gut instincts. It's fine that there's a man in your locker room, that there's a boy undressing next to you. You should be okay with it, or else you are the problem. So my message to your daughter would be, number 1, never ignore your gut instincts. To always call out an injustice when you see it, whether it's to yourself or you're witnessing this happening to someone else. And to be bold, stand unapologetically, stand firm, because what I have found in doing that is there are so many more people who think the way that you and I think and feel, especially regarding these cultural topics, than we were led on to believe. We have to remember that the majority of people, 77 million people actually, voted for Donald Trump. And I believe, of course, people turned out to embrace Trump, to embrace his America First agenda, to embrace his cabinet picks, whatever it is, but more so I believe that people turned out to the polls to support Donald Trump, to reject this absurdity. There was absurdity in the Democratic Party. So I think just knowing that, again, we are in the majority, it provides that cover to feel more confident and comfortable in saying what so many people already know to be true. So you'll have to tell her I say hi too. Yeah, that's really sweet.
Hey Riley, thank you again from all of us here. I mean, I'm a parent of a 5-year-old little girl as well, so thank you for answering her question. It's probably mine. But I guess it goes back to, and I've been following your story for some time now, even from back in my time at Project Veritas, following this whole crazy debacle that we had these last few years. My question is, that infamous scene in the locker room where you guys are all coming to this new normal or this realization, even now as the administration has changed, do you think, or have you guys talked to lawyers about that scene? I mean, isn't there some kind of like assault by proxy or sexual crimes or something that you guys have considered going against not only Leah, but the NCAA and the administrators who like forced a man into the locker room with you?
Love this question, and it's something that I think when you're 20 years old, 18, 19, 20, like your mind doesn't initially go to suing or taking legal action, right? Like I think too, especially for athletes, like we don't necessarily like to see ourselves in as victims in situations. But truthfully, in that situation, we really were. And so I'll tell you when I had kind of like an epiphany about this. The NCAA was having their annual conference where they announced their NCAA Woman of the Year, which is the most prestigious honor for collegiate female athletes. It's something that embodies not just your athletic achievements, but academic service, the list goes on. It showcases a well-rounded human being, student athlete. And so each university gets one nominee across all of their sports teams. So I was so honored when the University of Kentucky chose me to be their NCAA Woman of the Year. This was a school that had Abby Steiner, who's breaking world records in track and field. We have a national championship volleyball team, the #1 WNBA draft pick, Ryan Howard. We have a national championship rifle team. And they chose me. I was so honored by this until I saw a full list of the nominees for NCAA Woman of the Year. And it was not exclusive to just women, because the University of Pennsylvania said their most accomplished woman was a man. So I go to this conference, of course, at this point, not in support of what they were doing. I decided, again, this was 3 years ago, so I knew nothing about anything. There was a big convention hall where athletic directors and coaches would be able to walk around, companies or organizations could buy a booth and sell their product, whatever it is. So I figured I'm gonna buy a booth. What better way to get in front of people, the people who I want to speak to about this, than to literally force myself to be in front of them where they can't ignore me. So I had been outspoken a little bit, but with no notoriety, really, at this point. And so I applied to buy a booth with the NCAA, just with my name, Riley Gaines, denied. Tried again, denied, came up with an alias, and they were like, of course we'll take your money. So I got there, had a booth. I'm passing out these little like bracelets that just say Title IX. Like I had no idea what I was doing, but every single person I talked to, every athletic director who walked by said, thank you, whispering, blinking, said, keep doing what you're doing. Then I see the president of the NCAA, Mark Emmert, who has now stepped down. Now the president is Charlie Baker. But at the time it was Mark Emmert, who publicly released a statement saying that he unequivocally, I remember it word for word because it's hilarious to me, he says, I unequivocally stand in my decision to allow Leah Thomas to swim with the women because it's based in evolving science, is what he says, publicly. Evolving science. I see him. We make eye contact. I didn't know if he knew who I was. I assumed he saw the bracelets I was passing out. He immediately acts like he's on the phone, which is like the oldest trick in the book. I'm like, that doesn't work for me. So I approach him. He looks at me and he says, you know, Riley, thank you for doing what you're doing. You keep fighting. As if he's not the one that I'm fighting. And I say that. I say, how can you tell me that? When you're the person I'm fighting. He says, well, you have to understand my hands are tied. I said, who's tying your hands? You're the president of the NCAA. He says, well, we don't want to lose any sort of federal funds. We don't want to be sued. And it was then. It was like a light bulb in my head. I looked at him, I said, I'm going to sue you. I'm suing the NCAA. It is the suit is called Gaines versus NCAA. We've garnered 19 other plaintiffs across many different sports who have been on the receiving end of these harmful, regressive, discriminatory policies. And so we've been pushing forward. It's been ongoing now the past, I think, a little over a year. Super fun to sue someone with such deep pockets, by the way. Always a good time. But what is being laid out very clear, of course, this whole legal process is very long and drawn out, lots of stalling, lots of waiting periods. But the recent wins that we've seen, how University of Pennsylvania came to the table, signed this resolution agreement, it's not looking in their favor. And what they did again was very clearly and explicitly violate federal law. So I feel very confident that we will be successful in the suit. They've now just been desperately trying to file motions to dismiss. You know, we've done what we can do. We were following the law at the time. We understand the law's changed. We're going to change our policies, but we're not allowing them to walk it back. So all that to say, we need to sue the other side. That's what they do so well. Again, that's why Mark Emmert was so fearful. He didn't want to be sued by the other side. It didn't even cross his mind that our side could sue. Therefore, I think we need to take more action on the legal front, because ultimately that's how you make lasting change.
Well, thank you so much. I'm told you have a plane to catch. I don't know if you knew that, but you have a plane to catch.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
so-
Back to Nashville.
Back to Nashville.
Hopefully
Riley,
less humid than here.
let's express our appreciation for Riley Gage.